Hey, Christie, how many times have you won your company's Sales Top Producer Award?
Well, there was a time early on in my career, but considering the fact that I am the only person in my company, I win it all the time.
How about that? Now, how many times, though, have you been such a badass that you left the company before you even accepted it?
Oh, yeah, no, not nearly as many as I probably should have. There are plenty of times when I should have left.
Well, we're going to talk to one of those when we come back. Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had,
Yeah.
we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it the why and the buy. How's
All
that?
right. And welcome back to The Why and the Buy. Christie, we've got a special guest today.
Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation.
I mean, we always have a special guest, but today's a really special guest because she's such a badass that she walked away from her company after she reached her own personal goal of becoming that company's top producer. She got there and noticed, and this is very important, that she was dissatisfied with just the situation overall. It was a really good situation. It's a really good company. It wasn't about the people that were involved. She saw an opportunity to do something more. So as soon as she accomplished that goal, she set a new one for herself. There's a lesson to be learned there.
Oh, yeah. No question. I'm excited about this.
Camille Clemons, sales superstar. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm hoping to have left you just relatively speechless for just a second because I've never said badass so many times on my own show before. But, you know, it's seeing you on the video turn different shades of red is just kind of.
I was just going to say, I don't turn red often. It doesn't happen. So thanks for making that happen.
Oh, the pleasure's all on this side of the table. Let me tell you.
There you
I
go.
don't know what to say. So this could be 45 minutes of us just like sitting and staring at each other.
No, there you go. That would be a new one. That might be good on YouTube. I don't know how that works on the podcast though. The audio portion.
I'm sure we can find a way. We'll recover.
Yeah,
that's what you have to do, right? You guys.
As you do.
You got to recover.
Selling is about resilience. And if you are resiliently listening to this show on a regular basis, then please subscribe. Please tell your friends. Please give us a review. All that stuff. I also want to mention that this episode is once again sponsored by the Gittimer Learning Academy. Practicing the fundamentals is key to your success. Where do you go to learn those fundamentals? Jeffrey Gittimer taught me those fundamentals a long time ago, and I'd like to share them with you. Listen to the end of the show. We got a spot that we recorded to tell you a little bit more about it. But get in touch with us, gla@thewhyandthebuy.com, and we'll get right in touch with you. And, you know, a quick thing. Someone else contacted the show recently and was just stuck, really in a bad spot. She sent us an email and said, look, I don't know what end is up right now, but I think you guys can help. Christie, you and I had a brief conversation with that individual earlier this afternoon, and I think we're going to have her back on as a guest.
I'm excited about that one. So this young lady is fairly new in her sales career and is going to apply a couple of the things that Jeff and I coached her on, and then we're going to have her back. I want to just unpack what she's going through in a new sales role, someone that's brand new to sales in general. And I think there's a lot of interesting learnings that we're going to get from that. And perhaps Camille will get an opportunity to talk about getting unstuck, because that was where she was as well.
It was exactly where she was. And, you know, everybody gets into a sales role with a lot of vigor and a lot up, and then they get into a sales role and they realize that there's
like,
a lot of things that come up.
What just happened?
And, you know, I think she's going to have a lot of victories to share with us when we touch base again in a couple of months. But if you've got a question, send us an email, info@thewhyandthebuy.com. We get back to people. It's just what we do. And Christie and I live for conversations like this. So if you got questions, we've got answers. I don't know if they're going to be the right ones, but you're going to have something to go with. And yeah, we're back to our success story of the day, though. Camille Clemons is here. And Camille, how do you set such an audacious goal as I want to be the top performer in my company, and then as soon as you get there, just be kind of instantaneously bored with it?
I wouldn't frame it as boredom.
Well, I framed it that way so that you could, take it back the other way. But
there's certainly no shortage of things to do or things to uncover. But at the same time, I think I realized that when the numbers shook out and I happened to be at the top of that leaderboard, that part of me was really excited and gratified, and knowing that I put all the work and the time into what needed to be done to make that happen. The other half of me was like, well, wait a second. How could I have set such a limiting goal? And I have recently read a book that might be relevant to this audience, that actually put what I was experiencing into full frame visibility. I realized that when you set a goal for yourself, the goal is often dictated by the parameters with which you're working. Meaning, if you're given a goal, you want to achieve the goal. And kind of seeing anything beyond the goal is really difficult until you're close to achieving the goal. And then you think, wait a second, why was that my goal? And I've always been one to say, you could make my sales goal $1 billion, or you could give me, somewhere in the middle of America that has less relevance to financial services than the territory I'm currently covering. And I'm going to make it the most successful territory in the world. And I think me having that mentality, or thinking that I had that mentality to approach things, that no matter what I'm given, I'm not going to stop selling when I reach $1 billion, or I'm not going to take, pardon North Dakota, but really like irrelevant as it relates to financial services, because there just aren't as many people in kind of our prospecting wheelhouse that operate there. But I always said, I'm going to make this best. And really starting with that goal in mind, I didn't realize that I was really limiting myself, because it shouldn't be about what the company has for you. It should always be what you want to achieve for yourself personally. And I think my goals historically have always been set by a company with some list of, annual expectations. And my goal was to achieve those or exceed those. And I've learned in the course of, I would say, the past 16 months that it's way more than that.
That's really profound. And I like that, I want to go back to that, what you said. And when you set a goal, your scope is bound by what you know at that time. And particularly when you set a long-term goal, you don't know what your situation is going to be by the time you're around to reaching those goals. So you set $1 billion. This wasn't reality, but hypothetically speaking, you set $1 billion goal for revenue in
I didn't
the middle
sell
of
$1 billion. That's
no,
not
no,
what
no, no. Right. But hypothetically speaking, let's say if you set $1 billion goal for a territory in North Dakota, which is about as far from the world that you actually sold in or have been selling in as you can get. By the time you got to that $1 billion goal, it's not you couldn't get there, but by the time you got there, your whole world has changed. And was that the most relevant goal to be set? And I think there's something to be said about the timelines that we set these goals for ourselves. We like to think that a year is a reasonable enough time. 4 quarters. It's that's how publicly traded companies report their earnings. It's how they base future projects. Everything kind of the one trip around the sun, right? But I can remember myself being challenged by my manager. This is several years ago. Being challenged by my manager to be the top. The top producer in the company. And at the time, there were some other people who, I was doing well, but there were some other people that I thought were just doing way better than I was. And he said, I'm going to send you a report. We were on the phone. He said, I'm going to send you a report. I want you to take a look at those numbers again. And all of a sudden, where I thought there was probably a 10 or a 15% difference just because of territory size and tenure of the sales rep with the company and everything between me and the actual top producer, I was actually leading the race by about a percentage point. And at that second, my focus was totally reframed. And now I had a higher goal, middle of the year, middle of the quarter, because I had new information, and new information is supposed to help you change your outlook and change your perspective. And with the theme of being, with the theme of February on the podcast being preparation, I want to talk a little bit about that, because sometimes you get into a situation where if you can script all of your questions, if you can script some of those talking points, what happens when you find new information? Are you flexible enough to work with that? And Christie, what do you think about that concept?
Well, what's interesting, kind of listening to the two of you describe your circumstances, I wonder how often the limiting belief sits with you versus the company. So whether it's the limiting belief of how far you can go, how much you can push that boundary, or the limiting belief being, well, everyone else is operating it at this level, and so I'm going to continue to operate within that bubble. So, where is that driving force coming from?
I think, in my experience anyway, it's been that the company has a number to hit. That number's divided equally. Each person who gets a number increases it by 10% to give themselves a commission, and then they divide it equally by the number of direct reports, and so on and so forth. And that way the company does what they need to do at a bare minimum. What Camille has done is taken that script and flipped it completely, and it is totally writing a new one in that this is what I think I'm capable of. And then, man, I don't know if I can set goals fast enough. Camille, what do you think is a good time frame for setting goals, if that's the case? I mean, you set this goal to be the top producer in your company when you started, right? Which was what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? And then you did it, but maybe 3 years is too long.
Well, I would say that I don't know. First, I would say goals are really important, but I also think that you shouldn't necessarily tie a date or a time to them. It's nice to have, yes, I need to sweep the floor by this afternoon. But when you're talking about your career, I think it needs to be a little bit more fluid than that. Certainly a calendar year is what our society says is important, or an easy time frame to achieve goals and New Year's resolutions and all of those things. But at the same time, I think you have to be able to recognize when there's an opportunity and when the opportunity meets the right time for you to take the challenge. And that's what happened with me. I would say that I wasn't looking. I've never been looking, which is a really interesting thing. Certainly out of college, I was looking for a job, but I was able to, with some help, to find one. And the second time I made a move. So the first time I was straight out of college. The second time I was employed with a firm for a dozen years. And I was approached by another firm and they asked, hey, would you ever be interested? And my initial response was, I'm good. I'm happy. I have a role. I take it seriously. I know I'm helping, a group of salespeople. I was a sales associate at the time. But it wasn't until a couple of pivotal events happened where I thought, wait a second, why am I wanted to be in sales. I knew it, but I also thought I had to wait. I thought I had to wait for my chance and my time and my, someone to leave before I could assume a sales role. And there were a couple of things that happened that led me to the path that this was the right time. And that was 6 years ago. I started with the firm I stopped at after that, and I've been there for 6 years. But what I learned in my time there was it can't be just a date on a calendar. It has to be less about that, and it has to be more your ability to see an opportunity when it comes to you, and be willing to kind of trust your judgment and to take risks when you know that there could be something way bigger than you ever expected to come at the end of that.
How do you know when that's the right time? Okay, so when you are able to see an opportunity for what it is, wow. Yeah. I mean, Christie, you and I, we're all shaking our heads here. We get it. We're nodding along because we've seen those opportunities. We've taken them. How do you have the presence of mind to realize when it's an opportunity or when someone's just blowing smoke, or if it's just a myth or a dream or a vision? I mean, like, how did you know that it was bona fide and not fake or bogus?
So I don't really worry about things that are not in my control. I've evolved over time to not let something that I can't control or I can't change. I don't worry about that. So what I do initially when I'm making a decision is I strip out anything that I can't control. And one of the things that I have the ability to do pretty well is prepare and research. I've learned through the course of some of my previous jobs that those are really important things. And I don't think you can ever replace preparation with anything else. You can't fake that you're walking into a room unprepared. So what I did in both of these times that I've made career moves, the first time it took 9 months for the entire process from the time they said, hey, would you ever consider? I said no for a few months. And then I decided after an incident at work that occurred, and I kind of want to talk about that one for a second, because I think we oftentimes will hear things or feedback from people that we report to or people that are influential in our careers. And we may take it kind of with a grain of salt, but I started paying attention to the people I was reporting to and how they were affecting my mentality and my ability to grow. And I think that there were times in my career that I've been held back because of what I heard as feedback. And now that I'm going to have a chance to lead a team and eventually grow a team, I'm very conscious of how I'm going to interact with them and how transparent the communication is going to be and how wanted and welcome they feel on a team. And so the first piece of feedback that gave me kind of the mental capacity to consider leaving a job I'd been in for 12 years was a sales role opened. And I saw it pop up on the internal post screen. And I went into my boss's office and I said, I've been talking about this. Like, this is what I want to do. Can I be considered for this position? And verbatim, Camille, you're not my girl.
Wow.
I was like, wait, what? Really? Like, what does that even mean? And why? You've never told me, do these 10 things and then come back and you can have a sales job. None of that. So that's when I knew that all the questions that I had asked the new employer, so the firm that I'm currently with, or currently transitioning from, I don't know how to frame all of that, but
okay.
It's a lot. I knew that I needed to start asking questions that would help me build my case on why it was time to leave. So they would substantiate the T chart that I'd made, like the pros and cons. I could line those things up and make a kind of a credible decision. And knowing that my career and all of the things that I worked, kind of for a long time to build, they were all becoming very clear in what was important to me. The new job that I took straight from there was in a lead generation role. So I came in kind of as an internal, working with the external facing salespeople that I'm now one of, or was one of. I really don't know how to do this. In any case, I was supporting them with the goal of 2 years. I would get my own territory, and I would be kind of given the charge of carrying a bag. And we didn't know where that was going to be. We just knew that I was going to do everything I could to learn about the firm, the culture, the value propositions, et cetera, in the first 2 years. And then I would be given kind of reins to take it out on my own. And when I was given the nod, like from the bullpen, it was the coolest thing, because not only did I tell myself that I wasn't ready, because I didn't think I was, but the day they told me, Camille, you're getting New York, I was like, bring it. Of course I'm getting New York. Like, where else would I be? North Dakota really is irrelevant, right? So why not New York? And from there, it was just kind of climbing and climbing and climbing. And every year I'd have an increased goal, but my goal was never quite to the level of my peers because it was newer. And we all know that sales takes time. But then this year it became very real, and I was able to kind of do what I did, which was great.
I love the story that you just told, Camille. I think it comes from, I think a lot of people that are listening to our podcast have experienced what you just described. you said, I had to wait. I had to bide my time, right? I had to put in what was necessary in order to get there, only to realize there was no there. They were never going to put you into that role that you were striving to. And people tend to grow to fill the box that you give them, right? So if you give your employees a pretty small box, then chances are that's the growth level that they're going to take on. When you really paint a picture or create an environment where people can grow to their level of capability, it makes a completely different experience. And it sounds like you almost reached that plateau even in the second role before I know you're transitioning into something new, but it sounds like you kind of recognized that you had, even with this pinnacle of being top sales person in the organization, you still recognize that you've got, like, look, I got more growing to do. So I need to create a bigger box, right? Yeah. I need to go and move into a different place.
One of my favorite quotes is, leadership is a role, not a title. And I think credit to Simon Sinek for saying that, but I majored in business, but I had a minor in leadership when I was in college. And I'll give props out to Jack, professor at Ripon College, because I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but he was able really to help us understand that leadership is what you make of it, right? And you're a leader because you accept people for whom they are and what they can contribute, not because of a title that they've been given, whether earned or otherwise. It doesn't matter. And I think once I realized that I was in control and I could make the most of whatever situation I was in, I think that all kind of came to light. Jeff, you mentioned something that you said, or maybe it was Christie, you said you had to bide your time and you had to kind of wait your turn. There is something to be said for putting in the work and growing in each role. And I think I don't want that to be lost here, because I did spend a significant amount of time in operations. So the back office work that I'm currently selling, I first learned how to do the work. And while I didn't love it and embrace a daily checklist where I had to do all of these things to come to a zero balance at the end of the day, I do think that you can't discount or minimize the experience that you can gain over time, and try not to be antsy, because you kind of do have to earn it and you have to understand it before you can sell it. And I think there are some people who have even come to me for career advice saying, how do I get into sales? I really want your job. And once you kind of explain to them what a week looks like and how it's not yours, it's all about, the clients or customers that you're serving, and that you're a road warrior and there's no glamour in that. So it may look like an amazing thing to do, to be traveling all the time and to have a fancy suitcase and, shiny business cards. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And I just think it's important that they not lose sight of the fact that it takes a lot to get there. But once you get there, the sky's the limit. And you're really the only one who's putting any boundaries on yourself.
Yeah. Do you want to know where all the Hampton Inns with the best Wi-Fi in, Suffolk County are? Like, it's yeah, this is what I've learned.
Yeah. We did. Or read the bed bug registry, right? Which is always fun.
Oh.
Yeah. And we'd get that in, when I was in medical and going in and out of operating rooms. And it's like, I'll tell you what, I learned where I'm not having surgery. I learned where I'd rather have surgery. I mean, it's just little things like that. You're right. The glamour's not always there. If you're lucky, you eventually get to see some. But it's funny, the depending on the carrot that you set for yourself, you never quite get there, because at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. You can't just say, I want to be in sales, and then boom, there you are. You're in sales. That's like saying, I want to run the Boston Marathon. Well, guess what? You got to qualify. And if you want to qualify, that means you got to run another marathon within the prior calendar year. And in order to do that, you got to start training. So you should probably go buy some running shoes. And what's interesting is, I've heard this so many times. I've got a little more self-control than I used to, so my blood doesn't quite boil the same way. But, I've seen what those sales guys make. I'm pretty sure I could do that. Like, yep. Come on, buddy. Locked and loaded. Let's go. Let's ride for a week. Not even a week. Let's ride for a day. If you're not panting at the end of the day, then maybe we'll go for a second day. And then maybe, just maybe, if you're patient enough, you have what it takes. And Camille, you said the word antsy, and I love that word because when you're antsy, it means you've got this energy that you just need to do something with, and you can't quite control where it's going and where that energy is going, where that focus is. And that's exactly the point. Dig in, do something. Learn something. You need to learn all the things that I learned in order to get into this role before you can be effective in this role. You don't just get a new business card and all of a sudden you're in sales. Most people who get that business card and all of a sudden are carrying a bag are set up to fail. I was set up not entirely to fail. I was set up in a situation that changed because of circumstances out of anybody's control, 2 days after I took a job. That put me in a worse spot to start. But Camille, if you didn't spend those 2 years learning everything that went into providing what it was that you were selling, I mean, what kind of a foundation would you have had? And I don't think everybody wants to do that kind of work.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there is a certain amount of work that kind of just has to be done. Yes, you can accelerate it, and yes, you can figure out ways to make it happen sooner, but I would say my path is my path, and everyone's going to have kind of their own way of doing things. And I credit the people who can get it done sooner, but also I wouldn't change anything. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One, I've made a lot of great friends along the way. Two, I've learned a lot of hard lessons. And three, I think the process for me gave me kind of the credibility and the self-confidence that I need to be successful in understanding that I don't have a limit, that I can do whatever I want to do. And not to say that that's like a pompous thing to say, but truly at the end of the day, if I hadn't kind of gone through what I've gone through and experienced what I've experienced and made the connections that I've made along the way and understand how business actually works, I couldn't say I would be where I am.
If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at The Why and the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast.
Jeff and I are beyond excited that you choose to spend your time with us each week. We'd love to hear from you. And we thank you again for your support and for your connection.
18 years later, 12 years with one firm, 6 years with the next. After 18 years, you're an overnight success, Camille. Congratulations.
So I think that's a great segue, Jeff. So Camille, I know we've danced around this a little bit, but you received a top sales award at your current firm. And before the award is even delivered, you are starting a new venture. So tell us a little bit about that and what that preparation looked like.
So I have been a field salesperson for almost 4 years. I took about 6 months off to take on a role as a product developer, which it's funny to think that I had to leave the field 6 months after I got into it, but I saw an opportunity to make a huge progress point for our firm where we had a gaping hole. There was a chance to fill it. We had a client who was willing to do it with us. And I couldn't say no. It gave me a lot of exposure. It gave me a lot of kind of learning a new product. It gave me a lot of figuring out how operations could fit into it, where we needed to find professional partners. It was a little puzzle that I was really excited about taking on. So once I did that, they put me back in the field. And now I'm proud to say actually that product is not only fully functional, but has seen exponential growth. And it's been a really nice way to round out the suite of sales and services that we can provide to our clients. So it's a more well-rounded solution for them as well. And so that's a sidebar, but I've been technically in the field for 3.5 years. And after last year's sales award ceremony, which is a big to do, the chairman came up to me and said, I thought it was going to be you this year. He's like, I fully expect you to be walking across the stage next year and I'm going to give you the award. I said, I can't wait. And from the time I shook his hand and like left the ballroom that we were in, that was it. Like there was no next year for me. I was going to figure out how to do it this year. And I knew that I had built up a big enough pipeline because, like I said, if you meet your goal one year, you don't just stop and kind of wait for the next year to come around and take the last 3 months off. What you do is you keep kind of adding to the pipeline and building out what you've kind of established. And so I literally worked my ass off. And I worked it off where I knew I could find success, but also where I knew we could maybe more meaningfully get into an organization. So knowing that we were servicing one part of their business, but there were 4 or 5 others where we could do more, I took it on myself to just get in and meet as many people and understand as many of the different processes that were happening. And they turned out to be my best client, certainly. And I've traded crock pot recipes with one of my contacts there. And it's just cool how over time you develop relationships and it always turns into more if you're able to see that it can be. Like you can see into a firm and you can see where you can help and where you can maybe provide some efficiencies that they don't have today. So back to preparation, because I kind of skewed a little bit. And I'm saying that I skewed only because I think the point is research on the different companies you're working with to understand that maybe you're talking to person A, but there's also person B, C, and D, that as long as you know enough about their firm, you can just start asking general questions. And as long as you've prepared and you've come in with enough information to facilitate that conversation, they're willing to help you. And they're willing to, and maybe even more than you expected.
I think that initial connection is what you're looking for. And, once you've spent enough time in a certain industry, calling on a certain type of company or customer, you know enough about what their day-to-day is that you can kind of get by and with your own just personality, right? But at the same time, you need to do a little bit of homework going in because there's certain things that you want to kind of act like you've been there before, right? You also want to give them the impression that, or that's not just the impression, you want to give them the understanding that they were important enough for you to look into ahead of time. They're not just another dial on your list. It's, hey, I noticed this on your website. Hey, how is that working out? I saw this press release or, whatever it is. And the opportunity to use that to connect and then to work from there is really, it's advantageous for a salesperson to kind of undertake. And I've seen that, I've been in front of groups and I've been with salespeople before where the light bulb goes on over their head and they're like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought of that. I was so focused on making dials, I forgot who I was talking about. Okay, that's fair enough. You take that to the other side of the spectrum and there's people that will spend an hour and a half reading every byline of every press release that's ever been read about this company, even before the person they're calling on was even there. And then it can be kind of it's a belt and suspenders and and then some, you know what I mean? I think there's definitely a balance there. And I think the salesperson has to give themselves credit for the people skills that they have and their ability to carry on a conversation. And also to be flexible and curious. I mean, ask a question that person's never been asked before. Don't just bring up the same thing that all 12 of the salespeople that called them that day are going to ask about. And so I think there's, and we're not the only ones to talk about this, there's an art and a science to selling. It's about more than just a script. But I think the better you can dance with that, I think the more effective you're going to be.
Well, people like to talk about themselves and what they've done with that is proven successful in their business. And you have to kind of be open to hearing a story. And that's why you're there in the first place, because you want to figure out how you can help them. And if you can get them to open up and talk about what they've done over the course of their career and how they've found success. It just gives you kind of the ammo you need to take the conversation to the next level. So not everybody can see this, but this is how I used to prepare.
Oh, that's a notebook.
Nice.
Every
I like
page
it.
and every prospect I ever called would have a full kind of outline or profile in this book that I needed to complete before I would not only ask for a meeting, but before I would even like write my first email. So I needed to know that their profile fit what we were looking for and how we did business, and that they had what we needed and we had what they needed. But what I found in doing that is exactly what you said, Jeff. You can walk in and you can sound like every other person that has the same. Fortunately, in our industry, it's publicly available information. So if you're doing half of your job, you've gone out to the, to all of the places you can find information, and you can kind of put that in a book and move on and go have your meeting. But what I found more interesting was to care about kind of the softer skills of people, and not softer skills, but like the softer components of people. Where did they go to school? What did they study? What are they interested in LinkedIn? And you can see kind of all of the things that people subscribe to. And it's crazy to think, and I used to not look at those things as closely as I do, but now you look at them and you're like, wow, there's a lot to be done with that information. And that's not what they get to talk about during the day. So asking about their families because you see a photo on the wall, or, hey, I saw you were on the golf team. I play golf too. You want to go play golf? And it's just, I think that the second you figure out that you're dealing with people and that these are all interpersonal relationships, that whether it's the beginning of it or it's more established, the second you can get them to talk about something that they care about, the closer you are to building a relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
I agree. And I think that we could ask ourselves, what are you finding out about your prospects before you ever make the first call? That's a gem. That's a tweetable right there. So, I mean, definitely understanding that element is so critical and is skipped over too often in today's social selling society, right? And oftentimes even SDRs are doing that initial connection for us for some of our clients. And are you providing that support individual with the right questions or the right information to gather so that you can build a prospecting plan around that particular client? I mean, there's so many gems in what you just described, Camille.
Well, I think it's interesting you talk about social selling, and I just think I abhor the fact that it's become a buzzword in our industry, because social selling is the opposite, in my opinion, of selling. I think it's okay to automate some things, whether it's a monthly newsletter that you're sending out, or something that's very general in nature and could be widely distributed. But I am against wholeheartedly mass emailing anybody. And not only I hate when I get mass emails. I feel like you can tell right away that it's a mass email. And when you're given kind of every quarter we need to send out this mass email to reach as many people and continue to put our name in front of people, I get really nervous that there are people that I've interacted with that are going to receive the mass email, and they're going to know that it's a mass email that didn't come from me. And so I get a little over or hyper protective, because that's not my style. And I want to be as genuine in every interaction as I can be. And I think that it's very easy to just push a button and blast an email out to a group of 20,000 people, but it's way more meaningful to send it to 100 people that you've interacted with, and that it's relevant to their business.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you just hit on the problem that plagues marketing automation, social selling, and social selling. It's interesting how it's been described in journals and just on the platforms in general. But there are so many aspects to being truly social in a selling context. And it is not about marketing automation and being able to kind of arm your sales development reps with the right kind of information so that they can make those types of phone calls, those types of emails be truly interactive. That's the secret sauce, and that's what a lot of people are missing in a social selling context. And we'll dive into a lot of that in a future month of the why and the buy. But I wanted to spend some time as we kind of come to the end of our conversation, Camille, and really understand what is your why? What's the why behind what you do?
I think my why has always been the same. I just didn't realize it. And I think, perspective is really important to have. And it's not something that, like, if you always think about this is my perspective, you are missing out on an enormous opportunity. Because if you're not capable of seeing a situation from someone else's perspective, then it's going to be a long road to hoe. And I say that because my why is I believe in our industry. So I believe in financial services. And I think that there could be a generation beyond me that has some trouble with that still. And hopefully we'll be able to make a comeback. But I think that every day, my support of my clients is to help them kind of live out their goal, their dream. And they're investment managers who are running pooled investment products, so mutual funds and ETFs and hedge funds and private equity funds, and they're investing on behalf of their clients. And I believe in this industry because I'm kind of living out my success and my dream of building relationships with people while I'm helping them succeed. And right, it's ecosystem of success. And I can say that I'm happy and I like my job. And I can also say that I'm helping my clients achieve their goals as well. So it's kind of a cool dynamic, you could say, that I take it really seriously, and I do it because I know that I'm helping a lot of people in the process.
Because when you help your clients, you know that they're able to take their own responsibility and do what they do for, you're
thousands and thousands of people.
You're helping thousands of people by being a good salesperson. I don't think a lot of salespeople look at it that way. I think a lot of haters of salespeople refuse to look at it that way. But I wrote this down. If you're only thinking about your perspective, you're missing a tremendous opportunity. That's quotable, tweetable. Write that down. Put it on a bumper sticker. I don't care. That's really, really good. Very profound. Very profound. Camille, how can our listeners get a hold of you, or do you want to keep everybody at arm's length? I know you're not someone who likes to connect with very many people. So, how can people follow you, engage with you, perhaps? Except not from North Dakota, apparently. We've been kind of trashing on North Dakota today.
I tell you what, there's a lot of money in North Dakota.
Wait a second.
I kind of feel like I need to go there. I do know
we love you, North
people
Dakota.
from North Dakota, and they're lovely.
Yes.
It's just that relevance to my current role, it's probably like number 50.
Yeah.
No, probably 49.
South Dakota?
50. I'm not going to give I've dug a hole already.
Awesome. So how can people find you?
So I am on LinkedIn, and I also have a Twitter feed, which is at Camille Clemons, that I think is partially relevant. And I think the more important thing about the way I use Twitter is to just show that I'm a human being, because people like doing business with people, not with firms or companies. And I'm pretty dynamic in my tweets, and that they're often relevant to financial services because we're doing a lot of cool things. And I think it's a nice format to get the word out. But I also think that, like, tweeting about a cool, sunset that I saw, or I don't know, a book that I read, or something that may not be entirely relevant, just makes you human. And to see that people are multidimensional and not all about work all the time is really important. And that's how I find balance, because I think if I thought about work all the time, I wouldn't be interesting at all.
There's a lot of people that feel that way. It's important to be multidimensional.
So, hey, before we go, I know that our time is up, but I think it's pretty ironic what happened last week. So I was on the road I left on Sunday, and I read or listened to a podcast where they had announced that you talked about the Gittimer Learning Academy, and I read or listened to the podcast that mentioned that Jeffrey was coming out with kind of a next generation version of the little gold book of Yes Attitude. I think that's the full name of it. And so I was on the plane. I ordered it to be delivered to my hotel. They said it'd be delivered the day before I was set to leave. And it arrived actually the day I left, after I'd left. So I was trying to get fully in front of, like, I want to read this version and all the cool things that I'm sure he's built into it. But now I have to wait extra long because it still hasn't made it to my house.
That's
well,
awesome.
it'll be a big yes whenever it comes in. Then.
Oh.
Yeah, don't let me down, Jeffrey. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't get to talk
funny.
about the books that I love, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time now, but honestly,
Oh, yeah.
I'm so thankful for you guys for coming up with the concept of the book club. And I've already signed up because I don't want to run the risk of not making it in the first 50. I think I'm already logged into the podcast.
Nice.
No, not really. Or can I do that already? 'Cause I don't want that door to close and not be able to talk about
The
it.
door is always open for our guests, so
there you go.
you're in.
Always welcome.
But the timing of that suggestion, and first I'd never read the book, so it was all new material to me, but I think the timing of it was so crazy that I couldn't not mention the fact that it became very clear. And Jeff, I think I sent you a text that said something to the effect of, my windshield is the clearest it's ever been, because I finished the book and I thought to myself, all right, so the first time I made this decision to switch kind of paths and switch firms, it was something that someone had said to me that kind of was my catalyst. This time, it was something that I read that helped me understand that I have literally been flying as middle of the road as I could be for so long. And it was just cool timing. So thanks to you both for kind of making that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're referring to the Icarus Deception.
I am.
Yes. Love that book. Love that
Yeah,
book.
It's been and I read it once a year or so. And it's funny, I listen to it on Audible and you can just speed that up a little bit, but I pick something different out every single time. And it's just one of those books that is so layered and nuanced that you don't even have to listen like perfectly intently. I mean, you can listen while you're driving. You can pick up, the book and just read 10 pages. Don't worry about getting every word. You don't have to scribble and take notes. Some people like that. I don't. I'm going to pick up what I'm going to pick up. Yeah, Christie's over here like waving.
I have like notes and Post-it notes and little like markers and
see,
pictures in the margins.
If I took notes, that would suggest that I would actually go back and read those notes, and it's just not going to happen. But that's what I love, and really all the books that we have picked up. And, at the time of this recording, I'm getting ready to start our book for February. And thanks for putting that plug out there, Camille. The February book club is going to be, that's going to be February 27th.
At 1 p.m.
At 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be breaking down extreme ownership. And I heard so many good reviews about that book that I'm really thrilled that we get a chance to dive in. So, thanks for plugging the book club. Look at you, salesperson extraordinaire,
Nice.
coming on
Love
our
it.
show, telling people to do what they need to do. So yes, go thewhyandthebuy.com. Register for the book club. Register for the monthly newsletter. The book club recordings only come to those signed up for the newsletter. That's our little gift to you for subscribing, and it gives you an opportunity to interact with us a little bit. If I do say so myself, it's pretty cool. We're all right. And Camille, thank you so much for joining us.
It's very nice to meet you, Camille.
Likewise.
So, Christie, Camille clearly knows her why.
That's right. And when you understand your why, your hows and your whats get much better.
Talk to you again very soon, everybody. Thanks for being here.
See ya.
Told you once, I've told you twice. I told myself it doesn't matter.
99% of your success is rooted in your understanding and subsequent mastery of the fundamentals. I don't care what it is that you're doing. I was introduced to the fundamental principles of sales when I read Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Selling back in 2005. I actually bought it and gave it away 4 or 5 times before I finished it myself. Now Christie and I want to give you something. All of those lessons and so many more are now interactive and available online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on the Gitomer Learning Academy. It has never been easier or more accessible to invest 10 minutes a day in your sales success. Go to GitomerLearningAcademy.com to check it out and send us an email to gla@thewhyandthebuy.com and we'll get you set up with a free 2-week trial. Christie and I were looking for a house band for the podcast, and we were told the Roots were busy. So we found the next best thing. They're called Haskins, and they are gigging regularly in southeastern Michigan and all the time at haskinsmusic.com. Go check them out.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.